Jared, I should be in now, I think. I'm having a tough time hearing though.
We got Jared multitasking, and then he's giving the presentation.
And he's going to tell us where riblets come from. I secretly want to. Whatever you have.
Either here or you want to come here? Yep.
That's
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
Just for this.
Hey, John. Good, sir. All right, so we're good to go. Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming to the Idaho Springs Monday, August 8th work. It's 6:35. And first thing on our agenda, and the only thing on our work session agenda, is electric vehicle charging update. Please take it away, Jared.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor and Council. So before you this evening is a work session item to discuss the electric vehicle charging station relocation. So about a little over a year ago, this request came before City Council to allow, we're working with Pion and EV Build LLC to locate a charging station in what we refer to as the Mustang lot, so city property. Over the past year, though, we've talked about possible reuses for that property, and so we discussed this with Mr. Frank here and come up with a number of different options. We have a preferred option for you this evening, and it's in your packet on the second page of the work session item. It's along Colorado Boulevard. We had a number of options throughout town. We kind of started to focus down on just one that we want to bring before you this evening, and it's this option 2 on that site plan. So as you can see, it's some angled parking spaces and potentially some parallel area there. If council gives us a consensus, we will bring forward a resolution to amend our prior resolution that was approved last year. We certainly understand that we would, if the parallel area is used, we would, there's currently 2 large loading areas, typically for buses or bus with rafts or something of that nature. There is room to shift those back yet. We'll lose a couple of smaller normal car parallel spaces, but there is still room for those loading spaces. And then in the angled area, I've been speaking with Mr. Frank about the location of the actual charging units. If they might be able to go within the actual asphalt rather than the sidewalk, but if they did go in the sidewalk, because that is the greenway, it would need to be widened to make sure we maintain that 10 feet that the state worked with us on. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Frank for any comment.
Great. Hey, thank you, Mayor Harmon and City Council for allowing me in today. Yeah, I wish we were talking about moving existing charging stations instead of still waiting to build one. So I apologize for the delay. Lots of issues with supply chain, but we're getting closer. This is actually an excellent location, I think, for the city and for the drivers that are coming through, because we have a good egress on and off the highway. And I think it'll be an attractive spot, a destination for EV drivers. And if we're able to accommodate that parallel spot, it'll be attractive above a lot of locations where we're not able to accommodate pull through for trailers, trucks with trailers rather. We did that. We've got one in Lyman right now, and it's very popular because of the campers and people pulling trailers. Excel has been contacted about this location. We should have plenty of power. I think we're in pretty good shape with this. It still provides good access to downtown because, as you probably know, with EVs, we've got a 20 to 30 minute dwell, maybe a little longer with some vehicles. And that is good for the surrounding businesses because the folks get out of the cars and patronize the local businesses. So I don't have much else. The city staff has been great to work with. But we hope to get this thing approved and hopefully in by the end of the year. We're working our hardest to get that done.
All right, so Jared, staff prefers option one.
I apologize, option 2 on this.
Oh, option two.
Option 1 is closer to the fire station.
Oh, right.
And therefore we were concerned about their
Gotcha.
turning radius.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a great idea. Move into town, sort of.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with option one. They got volunteers are gonna hope to get more coverage 24 hours. We need parking or so.
What's the cost compared to the previous location?
That's a good question. I believe the cost for the city is pretty minor because I believe that it's mostly being put in by Jim and his group and some grant funding that he's been working on.
There is no cost to the city. We cover all the capital expenditures and all the operating costs on it. We actually do have in the lease as well a monthly payment to the city. That was to make up for lost parking revenue, but I anticipate you may end up charging parking down here, so we've left that in the lease as well.
So this was proposed earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, Jared, behind the city lot, yes? Where they would have like EV stations.
So yeah, initially last year it was in the Mustang lot.
At 13th?
Yes.
Or
Yep, proposed for that. It was proposed there. It was actually approved at one point, but because of our potential property swap.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, why do I not remember that? Where that would be more important than that.
But we have kicked around a number of other ideas. Typically, they haven't risen to the city council level. It was more of a staff conversation.
Okay,
But yeah, we did kick around some ideas that would have included a little bit of space back here too.
So on that lease, I think we get paid back for part of the charging station, right, or something.
the only thing I'm concerned about is a lot of times that if these are open, we're talking about EV stations, which is cool. Like I understand, the future and where that's kind of headed, but what do we do with the big 40-foot RVs with a trailer, like, and a Razor on that thing, or 2 Jeeps on a big trailer, like.
You mean like the new electric F-150s or something like that?
Even that,
Yeah.
if they're hauling a 50-foot trailer, right, with 3 Razors on the thing. Right, where's the room to accommodate them, even like my bus is 40 feet. So, and if I put my trailer and my RZR on it, you know, I'm 65 feet.
Are you just worried that that's not enough space?
No, I'm just worried that we're slowly taking away from accommodate for, you know, we're driven toward, well, we need accommodate for EVs, but you know, I've also learned that, you know, there's been tickets given in this whole area because of, you know, like Warren's place right there in the center,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Residential.
Well, he has a big 40-foot RV, he's got a 25-foot trailer with a RZR on it.
Is he parked on city property?
No, but if he's getting ready to leave and he's waiting for others, i.e. my brother, me, right,
He
his
can't get
son,
out?
Yeah.
they park there and then they're getting tickets.
So there are currently 2 locations that is that what you're referring to, the big loading, parking spaces?
Right,
So this does indicate that portion of the planned charging area would take up a lot of that space.
sure.
But we have about 1, 2, 3, 4,
Maybe
5,
8 spots, yeah.
6. There's like 6 smaller spaces further east. So staff believes that we can shift both of those large loading spaces to the east and still be accommodated.
For the buses and for the
So we've maintained
Yeah.
those 2
rafting.
loading, unloading for oversized vehicles, those spaces we maintained.
But there'll be, so there's basically, you're talking about like 14 spots, basically on number 2, where,
Yeah, it cuts off unfortunately on the image that you have in your
Uh-huh.
packet, because I had to double check this myself.
yeah, sure,
But there are a number of spaces here that are just single car spaces. So
uh-huh.
we would lose a few of those in order to shift the big ones over.
But they're not, if they're not EV, they're not allowed to be there anyhow, correct?
Correct, if they, well, the 2 loading spaces would be for anybody, EV or otherwise, as long as if you're pulling something big, those are your spaces to park.
I mean, honest to God, that's really that section of Colorado is the only place where there would be anything oversized accountable, or I'm sorry, accommodating for that. I guess my point is that I think we're a lot too, not that I disagree in any way, shape or form, but maybe we can somehow accommodate like a dump station too. Let's be more inviting to everybody in town than just electric cars.
I certainly don't disagree that we have a lack of large vehicle parking areas.
Correct.
And, you know, that's something that I think it would be nice to further accommodate. You know, we currently only have 2 spaces here, but I don't disagree that it would be nice to have some
Well,
more
those
spaces
spaces
in
too,
some
though, are
place.
used by the buses, the rafters, and if the rafters can't get in, like that creates another whole problem. because-
Well, and very true there. Plus because we kind of sucked them off with our horseshoe pits and stuff, which was cool. I mean, they're still working with a lot of that, right?
Sometimes.
Well, sometimes. Other than that, it's Safeway, where, you know, guys like me or whoever, you know, they'll go spend $400 or $500 in the store. You know what I
I
mean?
do think you're right that we need to have places where, like, we have 5 spots where if you have a trailer, you're pulling a big RV or
Yeah.
5th wheel, you have, or like even the big bus RVs, like when I see the bus
Like
RVs,
mine.
you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, but y'all trying to make it around downtown, that's,
I can make it
That's-
just fine down here.
well, you might be a better driver than some of the folks that I pass, because not everybody can. I think that if we had 5 or 6 spots, that those are big trailers, 5th wheels, RVs.
Ginny, you could make a fortune if you clear out your cars and make that into a large vehicle parking lot.
In my house?
No, over at your, at your place.
Oh,
Do a
it's
little-
shop?
Do a little
Oh, that's
razor,
up to Jared. We don't want to talk about that.
wait, no, you do a
I
little
certainly
razor
would rather talk
shuttle.
about that.
So these stations, are they gonna be on the south side of the sidewalk, so you're not stretching cords, the cords are stretching across, so is
Yeah,
that?
so I think, you know, Mr. Frank could probably talk a little bit more about the actual physical installations. But they would be closer to the vehicles. You would have an impeded 10-foot wide path, yes. without cords draped across it or anything like that.
And so-
I worked on one of these in my prior position and it was in the sidewalk, but it was really close to the curb. And so, yeah, it didn't impede the flow.
There's gonna be underground trenching under the new sidewalk or?
There's
with
gonna
that,
have to
no
be some
cuts.
form of either undergrounding or, you know, breaking up and
And
replacing one.
movement of concrete too, yeah. And then now these aren't gonna be like proprietary to Tesla.
I think anybody can use the Tesla one though, as long as you have the adapter on it.
Yeah.
So
that's
anybody
the trick
can use
right
it.
now.
Well,
I'm sorry, it's the other, these are universal chargers. So they're for everything but Tesla. Teslas can use these with an adapter. It's the other way around. There you
I like it better that way, Frank.
go. Right. And as far as that installation, we will not be on the walkway. If we need to impede into it, at our cost, we'll widen it. All of the gear, the transformers already in place, but that'll end up in the green space. We'll bore underneath the sidewalk, and then we'll put pads and bollards at the end, the nose end of the parking spots, the pull-in parking spots.
is there, I mean, are we finding a lack of in the city?
It's becoming really popular.
Yeah, I think we're behind the curve.
We're behind,
Well,
and then we're also the county.
It's always full.
Well, sure, who does?
Yeah.
Who has the budget?
George
serves them.
I think that, so right now, you know, we have a Tesla station. Tesla is not, kind of like you mentioned with the iPhones, right? Tesla is not as welcoming to other brands. Well, now there's a number of other brands that are on the market, and they typically are able to utilize this more universal charger. And so I think you will find that there'll be some demand for it.
I'm surprised at how full the Tesla parking lot is. Like every time I go down there, Wednesday through Saturday, Sunday, it's full.
Mhm.
Well, you probably just look at the statistic on what electric vehicles are out there and that'll tell you why.
Sure. And it's not affordable to put it in our city lot back here behind.
I think that's gonna create even more of a parking mess, just trying to get those big rigs through and,
Right, but that was the original.
yeah, I know it was
Sure.
until I said we do whatever, or CDOT did whatever they were gonna do. I mean, just trying to go into that lot as a local is maddening, so, and I drive a Corolla. To try to dart around people.
Wouldn't surprise. This is all
So
start.
did you ever think about the lot down by McDonald's, see that lot? East of McDonald's and
I don't believe we looked at the CDOT lot. The grass field right now.
right,
I don't think we looked at that one because, one of the items that, one of the things that Mr. Frank was looking for was proximity to other businesses, so to
you got
downtown.
McDonald's,
Um,
all kinds of restaurants down there.
That's true. We did look at, Soda Creek, so just on the other side of 70 where there's some free parking currently. We did do some investigation over here as well and some of the lots behind Minor Street. But no, we did not look at that spot.
See, that's the one that's kind of pushing all this, isn't it? All the governors.
There's certainly proponents of it, yeah.
Might think about that in the future though, you know, as the number of electric vehicles, you know, continues to go up, maybe we'll have need in the future, but that's a really good suggestion. I said that's a really good suggestion.
I agree. I think Scott's right. We're behind the curve with how much that we have available.
Scott's got a sweet place just west of the field, that's what I think.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's not mine anymore.
Oh,
Uh-huh. Okay.
so, or would the
I
rest,
should have kept it.
would council be amenable to option 2?
Yeah, more than one.
I would like to ask though, that, because I do think that Jimmy has a good point, that we do see a lot of bigger rigs. Like, can we please put that in our planning since we're building this parking garage? Like, where do we want these folks to go? Let's give them somewhere to park.
They're big money spenders in the town. They really are. They're not necessarily a nuisance, but they
Oh, I don't
use.
think they're nuisance.
No, I know, but that's kind of been the consensus of.
Oh, no, like, can
Just
we
the
just
big
have,
rigs got a bad reputation,
They
you
do.
know.
They do. So,
Can we just put, can we have somewhere that
I'm-
like is good for them to park, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that, Lisa.
And I think that's part of the whole technology in the car, the EVs, is it tells them where to go, so they don't have to like be driving around. And that also might take away from the problem that we have, is that they have the destination in mind, they know
Very,
exactly
very
where
true.
they gotta go.
In recent times, the practice has been to have oversized vehicles parked along Colorado Boulevard.
Mhm.
And yes, they may take up several spaces, but that's more manageable for them to get in there.
And out of there.
And
and out.
use those, and they're not gonna be hassled there. I mean, it's
Mhm.
not paid parking, it's
Right.
often underutilized, so, and that works pretty well. It's not good if someone's there for an extended period, but if someone's there and doing their business and wanna move on,
Are those 3-hour parking for non-residents, is
there's
that,
no restriction on Colorado Boulevard, once you
Is that-
get east of the fire
is
station.
that something that we need to like look at in the future? I
It
mean,
may at some point. It hasn't been a real issue so far.
Not yet, but I-
Heard about.
coming back into town yesterday, Colorado Boulevard in the residential areas was lined with cars that were not Colorado residents, lined with them, and if I hadn't been so exhausted.
Or two on some.
Well, I looked and I didn't see as many as I would have liked to see, because I mean, the signs are, you know, you don't want to pollute the city with the signs, but they're there and it's very obvious that other people are.
Right, you
You
see
know-
out of state license plates, yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I would say in the future, it's definitely gonna be something that we'll be looking at.
Like a tag or a sticker.
Well, with proposed, you know, the hiking trail, if that becomes a bike trail, I mean, we're gonna,
They were-
parking's an evolving matter all the time.
Scott, they were already doing it this week and I left on Friday afternoon or morning. And by 19th and Virginia, there were
Pearl.
4, yeah, you live right there.
I
There were
live right
4
there.
cars parked.
Yeah,
I
there's
called
none.
Megan and I said, are these your friends? And she said, no, they want to go biking.
No, they're rafting.
Or whatever they were doing, I don't care. I said, call the police, because it's a tight corner to begin with.
Yep.
And now you've got 4 out of towners who just are gonna park wherever they want.
I had the same thing. I had 2 Teslas.
We don't
I
have
couldn't
the, we
get a
don't
car
have the
out of my
signs
yard.
there.
I got a big yard.
Yep, yeah, we do need,
We should have the signs there.
we'll just gate Sunnyside.
All right, so if folks find the preferred option, option 2. Jared, I think that's the direction you were looking for. Anything else?
No, we will work on updating the resolution, bring back to you at a future council meeting.
All right,
You can be up for more than one station on one area.
Yeah, Jim, how many are you proposing along this stretch?
There are 4 going in right now. And one along the parallel 3 in the spaces, the first spaces to the east. We will have to make one of those ADA compliant, so it'll be, one of them will have to be widened.
Would you be looking at other areas?
Oh, it's a good question.
Parkway.
Yeah, so the new infrastructure bill that's coming out, it looks for 4 chargers in on a corridor stop like your town. And then contemplates whether, you know, what the next expansion looks like after you've seen the usage at those 4 stations. So that's kind of the method we're using here. We're going to check the utilization. If they're, you know, they're packed like, and I anticipate they will be with the F-150 coming out in the Rivian. You guys are going to see an awful lot of traffic there. Then, you know, we could talk about other places in town. We'd love to keep investing in Idaho Springs and, you know, make it a destination. It's a tight town though. There's not a lot of extra space. So we got to be smart about how we, you know, put these stations in. I think we're probably 24 months out before we even look at an expansion at the earliest. But we could do it along that Colorado, just keep taking those angled spots if that makes sense, or we could go down by the McDonald's. We tried to stay away from the spots behind downtown. If it's a tight lot, we would be putting a lot of equipment in there, which would make it even tighter. The space along Colorado, the Bustang lot was perfect because it was on and off the highway quickly and it was close to downtown. This is probably the next best space. And we could expand there if the city wanted to.
He does, easy to get on.
I'm sorry.
Are there plans in the park garage structure for EV spaces? Do we have an idea of how many? 4, 8?
I must say, it's gonna be a total of 20.
I thought there was 20 was what I heard.
Okay.
So that'll,
Can I make a comment about that? It's a different type of charging. We're doing DC fast charging. It gets you about 150. It's like the superchargers for Tesla. So it gets you about 150 miles of range in 20 to 30 minutes. What's contemplated in the new mobility center are level 2 chargers. So much slower, 20 miles of range in an hour, but it's more appropriate for commuter parking.
Jim, am I correct that this station will have the capacity to be expanded to 8 charging stations? Is that right?
We had in our original agreement the ability to expand when the utilization dictated it. Yes, we would come to the city first and say, hey, looks like we could add a couple and support them. But yes, up to 8.
At this time, it'll be 4 charging stations, 4 charging stations. Okay.
Yes, sir.
One geared towards the big spot for oversized vehicles, and then the 3 diagonal, one of which will be ADA accessible.
Direct. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything more? All right, we will call an end to our work session and come back here in about 5 minutes if somebody needs a break.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, guys. Good talking to you.
No rush. Okay, I just want to make sure. It is 7:03, and I would like to welcome everybody to the regular council meeting for August 8th, 2022. And thank you for joining us. First thing is roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Lisa Manifold. Here. John Curtis. Kit Collier. Here. Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Here.
James Clark.
Here.
Thank you.
I should mention, Art already let us know that he would not be here tonight, and the city attorney will also not be here tonight. Everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. We have an agenda before us tonight. If I could get a motion.
I'll move to approve the agenda for August 8th, 2022.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah, thank you. First and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? All right, hearing none, I would ask that we have a motion for the approval of the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes from July 25th, 2022.
Thank you, John. And a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kate. We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next up is bills. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve bills to August 8th, 2022.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. Second. Any discussion on the bills?
Art's not here.
All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kit Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Yes.
James Clark.
Yes.
Thank you.
When did I become James?
It's formal. It's formal.
Oh, wow.
And do we have any public comment tonight?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to resolutions with, we only have one tonight. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 16, series 2022, a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the Clear Creek County Advocates concerning the provision of services to victims of crime and trauma.
Second.
Okay, Jimmy said second. And any discussion? I think we all recognize the value here.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Then roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Okay. I feel better. All right. Moving on to Public Works. We've got a couple requests for action here. And could I have a motion on the paving?
I'll move to approve 255,000 to Foothills Paving and Maintenance Inc. for asphalt repairs from line item 23-00-6016.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, first and a second. Any discussion?
John, have you found the prices going up on paving as well as everything else?
They have somewhat stabilized actually, since the price of diesel has dropped a little bit. So
And
they have
John,
stabilized.
I noticed we have used a fast patch in the past,
Mhm.
but what a difference in the
Almost uh,
bids.
a $200,000 difference.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why
Yeah,
that was, but
wow. Well, some very worthwhile work. Any further discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next, we've got a biggie, the Public Works Building. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve $3,248,870 from line 21-00-7044 to 80 Miller for Public Works Building Construction.
And do we have a second?
Second.
First and a second, discussion.
Was this over and above our? This is down here, yes?
Mhm.
Well, I thought that was around $1 million.
I think it was 2.8, wasn't it?
About 2.5 is around what we originally.
Over and above the 10, that,
You know what was remarkable about this for me at $3.25 million is we ended up with 3 contractors, all within 50 grand
wow,
on a $3.25 million project. I mean, so.
Pretty good.
Yeah, oh yeah. I would say so. A couple outliers, but I mean, you know, when you get 3 aligned, like, I thought that was pretty good.
Did we keep everything in the final design that was desired, or did we cut anything?
So far,
that's a good question. Yeah.
we'll
Because there was
see.
that outside storage that was being considered.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in
Everything
there.
is
And the sand storage too.
Right.
Sand
It's all in
storage,
there.
and then there was also a storage building for parks.
And then,
Trash enclosure.
and then like 3 bays, yeah, John, is that,
4 bays.
4 bays?
And if I may, Mayor, Council, this gentleman here is Nate with JVA Engineering. And he took over Tracy Wallace's, so he'll be our city engineer. And he's here on this project if you have any questions or anything specific that you'd like to ask him.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, John.
Oh, yeah.
We're happy to have you. Glad you made the trip up here. If anyone has any questions, there's the person to ask right there.
Well, I noticed you weren't recommending the lowest bid because of troubles on another project, so those must have been substantial, I would take it.
Correct, yep.
And we're obligated to take the lowest responsible bidder. So there's that one bit of qualifier in there.
Yeah, there
Of
was
course.
one above, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, actually, Jimmy, there were like four of them.
There were 4.
We ended up going clear up to 3.8 million or something on one of them.
There were
5
5 bids
total.
total.
Yeah, I saw that.
The first 3.
Oh,
were
sorry,
at the
3 of them.
3.2 million range, and there's about a 3.5 and a 3.9 million.
Right. Fortunately for us, the second bidder was only a little bit higher.
Correct. Yeah.
And
Correct, yeah.
yeah,
36.
And when would this project start?
Hopefully, as soon as you guys approve it,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Right, better be done next week. Just kidding.
Are there any further questions? All right, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Kit Collier.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Yes,
Jim Clark.
Yes,
All right, John, we're on our way.
John, you should be smiling.
there you go, yeah.
We're gonna get it started
This
finally.
is your retirement gateway. We're gonna try and get this
Now
done.
it's
No,
time,
no, no, no,
now
no,
it's time
no.
to
Don't be making
retire.
those noises.
After it's done.
After-
time coming.
Yeah, you might like that new building so much, you might just stay.
All right, next up is our finance officer. Welcome. We'll be discussing the financial audit.
Yes, Mayor, we're going to start with our auditor,
Oh,
Tim Mayberry, who's here, and he'll tell you how the audit went, and then I'll follow that and kind of walk you through the results of the audit and what it means for budgeting.
excellent, thank you.
I will keep my section brief, because Brian knows a lot more detail than I have on. The city does receive a clean opinion for the 2021 audit. This is the first full year that Lorraine's been keeping the books. So it actually went a lot smoother this year than the year before. There wasn't quite as much unraveling. Opinion is a little bit different presentation than what we had in the past because standard assumes we have to present a little bit different, but you still receive the same opinion. It just looks different. As far as results of operations, general fund, you spent down just a little bit, 150,000, so maybe not quite that much. Water fund and wastewater fund or sewer were both positive this year. For the most part, wastewater treatment plant project is complete. It was placed in service during 2021, so that part's good. You're in compliance with all your loan covenants, which is good. The only thing that I wanted to point out, which you're aware of, and I hear you're still working on this, is keep in mind that over half of your resources in the sales tax fund are loaned to wastewater to complete that project. And there were no formal repayment terms adopted when you entered into those loans or those interfund loans. I think that's part of your budget, or you're gonna be talking about that as part of the budget process this year, as far as coming out, how do we get that money back to sales tax, because you don't want to tie your hands too much regarding other city projects that you might be doing, and those funds might be needed. But all in all, everything looked really, went very well. No real concerns that we were seeing when you were in your account and operations as far as how you're keeping your books or anything like that. All that's working well. Kelsey's getting more comfortable with us as far as the audit process and getting the information, so that process is working well. Like I said, no concerns from our standpoint as far as how your operations are going. Much smoother than what we've had the past couple of years. It just keeps getting better and better. So we appreciate that, all the work that your staff and has gone into it to get you where you're at. So, any questions for me as the auditor? Like I said, I'll keep mine brief.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Everybody, it's a pleasure working with Tim Mayberry and his company. They're very well regarded in the municipal audit industry, and they teach us things, they find things, they help us. They're very thorough, but they're not nitpicking, and they're just really great to work with and excellent for a city this size, I think. So my role here tonight is, as last year, to try to walk you through this audit, because you do have a fiduciary responsibility to understand and to safeguard the financial position of the city. And so this is the audited numbers, and it's no better time to go through it than right up after the audit. It shows your complete results of operations in the most recent year. And it will help you to know exactly where we are for the budget process, because the last real numbers that'll be in that budget document are 2021 actuals. We'll have estimated actuals for 2022 and forecasts for 2023, but this will be the starting point. So if you would, if you have your copies in front of you, I'll just kind of walk you through it. You can interrupt me as we go or ask questions at the end. But I'm going to start with on page M1, which is the management's discussion and analysis. And as I mentioned last year, this is a synopsis of what the numbers mean, and something you can use if you're called by a reporter or a student or somebody who's doing a project or research on the town, or you're just heading off to a conference and you want to have it in your mind in case someone says, how's Idaho Springs doing? You can look at this page 1, and there's your financial highlights for the year. And at the end of the year, your net position was over almost 47 million. So that can help you to see how much bigger you are than some other cities or towns that you might be talking to representatives from. The net position decreased by 550,000. So essentially it stayed pretty stable. That's 1.2%. The net position of the governmental activities, which we've talked about when we review the financial statements and how it's the cash in and cash out and your general fund and your main operations, decreased by $1.3 million. So we'll look at that a little bit on the pages as we go forward. But again, that was less than 3% change. And then the net position of the business type activities, which are your water and wastewater funds, was positive 3.7. So again, all in all, kind of a stable year, no big swings. And then at the end of 2021, the city's governmental funds reported ending fund balances. So that's different from net position, because see up above on that third bullet, it says the city's governmental activities. Oh, it didn't say there. We'll get to that in a second. The ending fund balance are 9.5 million. The net position is more like 35 million. So we'll talk about that difference. This marked a slight increase from the prior year's ending governmental balances. So again, fairly stable. And so you can answer those questions. How's the city doing? You say we're pretty good. Even though we went through this lockdown and the pandemic, we had a pretty stable year, and our financials for 2021 were looking good. Going on to page 2, this kind of tells you what your different funds are. There's 3 different types of funds in governmental accounting, and you have some of all 3 of those: proprietary, fiduciary, and governmental. you're most used to the governmental and the proprietary. And the governmental funds are the ones where what governments are generating or collecting taxes to run the operations of a government. The proprietary ones are run like a business where you're selling goods or services and needing to make money or have grants or something to cover any deficits, and you're tracking your total value of your operation. Fiduciary are where you're holding funds that really aren't the cities, but you're the most logical entity to hold them. And you have a cemetery fund and you have a pension fund that you're the fiduciaries for. You go over to page 3. These are the two different types of, these are synopses, real succinct encapsulations of the two different types of financial statements that you generally will be reviewing. The one on page M3 is your net position. In business, it's often called the balance sheet. And this is the results of your operations over all time. So ever since you became a city, you've accumulated these totals that are shown here. And at the end of 2021 for your governmental activities, your net position was 34 million. I said 35 a minute ago, 34.3 million. See at the top, it shows your current and other assets, cash essentially and receivables, and then of 10 million, and you have non-current assets of 34.6 million. So that's generally this building, your parks, your infrastructure that's in the streets, things of that nature that, as we've talked in the past, you're generally not going to sell. So it's not like a business that could sell off this or that to raise capital. You generally need those things to keep functioning. So they're shown here because they are part of what you have, and it gives you this net position of 34 million. But there's two ways we're tracking things in government. One is your total economic health, which this shows, and it includes all those capital items. It also includes long-term debt on any of them. And then there's the financial health, which is the money in, money out, and we keep paying our people and buying the things we need to buy. So these two charts here on M3 and M4 are capsulized statements that show your economic health with all those capital assets included. The rest of the book, we're going to concentrate on your financial health for those funds. That's what we usually look at in the monthly financial statements too. The business type activities column on page M3 shows it has total net position of 12.6 million. And when you look up there on the second line there, it shows 19 million in non-current assets, but it has a lot of debt associated with it that's shown in those non-current liabilities. It comes down. And then the far right two columns show the totals of both the governmental and business type, equaling 46.9 million for the year. And that's what was in that first bullet on page 1, M1. Going over to the right-hand side of your book there on page M4, this is where we're looking at these operations of 1 year and how the operations of that 1 year, 2021, and then we've got 2020 also shown, changed the net position over time that's on the previous page. So in 2021, just the operations of 1 year, this is often called the income statement in business, is your revenues coming in to 5 million and your expenses going out for 5.9 million. And so the governmental activities did have that decrease of 1 million during 2021.
Lorraine, you said it in the notes down below that most of that change is attributed to depreciation of capital. Which ones were which ones were those that you were thinking depreciated?
All these assets.
Everything just went down?
Everything is depreciated in these statements every year until its useful life is over.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Which is how many years?
It depends on the nature of an
On
asset.
what it
So
is,
like a
sure.
car could be 5 years.
5 years, yeah,
A building could, wastewater treatment plant could be 50 years.
gotcha.
So if you circle those top 3 left numbers under program revenues for governmental, starting with 427,000, they total about 730,000, right? program revenues. And then you look down, halfway down the chart, it shows your program expenses. They total 5.9 million. So the revenues that come in governmental activities from those programs, which are general government, public safety, public works, et cetera, don't nearly pay for those expenses. And that's why all those other numbers underneath the 50,000 for the grants there, the fourth figure on down, are what you get in general revenues that aren't from those programs. And it just shows you right here, these governmental activities rely on sales and use taxes. There's almost 4 million coming in from that. When you look at the business type activities and circle the top three, those charges for services are your user fees, your utility bills, any grants that you get for the operation. And that's the bulk of the revenues there of 2.4. And they cover the 1.9 down below of the program expenses here. So that's why there's these two different types of operations you've got going on in a municipality. The next few pages show some charts and graphs that kind of detail that. The revenues by source for the governmental activities is the big aqua section, sales and use taxes, whereas charges for services are 8.5%. Then your expenses and program revenues below that are shown for each of those programs. Oh, big expenses, small revenue, program revenues for each of the different types. On page M6 is the business type activities, where the big blue section is charges for services. And that's the way it should be. You want your charges for services to finance your operations. And then down below, it shows for the two different operations there that they each have revenues covering their expenses. Turning to page M7, we talk about the city's funds, and now we've left those two main charts that we looked at on initially that I said were for the entity-wide, for the flow of economic resources, including all of the capital and everything for the governmental funds. Now we're looking at the way funds are usually tracked for your budgetary purposes. And the city's funds here show you've got three major governmental funds: general fund, sales tax improvement fund, and the 1% street sales tax fund. And then you've got two major proprietary funds, which are the water fund and the wastewater fund. Page, the capital assets and debt administration are kind of synopsized here on page M8. We're going to skip over to the next section now and look at page M10 before we do, because the capital and debt are shown in the back of the book, and we'll just glance at that. The economic factors and next year's budgets and rates. This is something that's required to be in your management discussion and analysis. And you're supposed to say, well, after looking at the results of these operations, what does that portend for the future? And they make you look 1 year ahead. And for 2022, we've got that paragraph saying it was prepared with the adverse effects of the economic shutdowns in mind. So it was pretty conservative. And we're going to continue to budget that way. But the section that starts with federal spending is, to me, the most concerning of anything in this book. And that is, we don't know what's going to happen with inflation. And there's several things: the federal spending policies related to unemployment, insurance, people not working, restrictions on domestic energy production, and the historic expansion of the monetary supply are all contributing to the inflation we see now and what is probably still to come. So we should see. Turning the page, you get to the auditor's opinion. And if you want to read through it, it is in the new format that Kim mentioned. The second paragraph, though, is where the rubber hits the road. And that's, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining information that's in here. So it just, that's what Tim refers to as a clean opinion, which you customarily get and you want to keep getting. Going on to page 4. This page 4 and page 5 are the full statements that were truncated in the management discussion and analysis, we look at for the entity-wide statements that have the capital in there as non-current assets showing for each of those fund types. So we're not gonna look at those again. That's more detail if you want to delve into it a little more. Going to page 6 is the fund by fund statements for the funds that you have. And when you look at page 6 on the general fund, for instance, the top just shows current assets, and there's no non-current assets here. Now, we just don't pay attention to those. We're looking at money in, money out, enough money for your budgeting and for your operations. So when you go over to the total column on the second half of this page, drop down to the bottom of total fund balance, it's 9,573,000. It's the second figure from the bottom of that total column. That's the $24,000, $24 million difference from what was up front when it had the capital assets in it. And that's why these are different from the fund book. So then, going to page 8, with each of these major funds that we mentioned, and the revenues and expenditures. And then going down the general fund, you see the revenues 2.9, expenditures 3 million. And so there was a deficiency there, and the transfer out to the pensions, and that is a $136,000 loss or reduction in fund balance that Tim mentioned. And again, that's kind of staying pretty stable from where you were the year before. The other two major funds improved as the sales taxes came in, and they haven't all been spent yet on projects during 2021. Going to page 10 is the individual amounts for the water fund and the wastewater fund that were combined in the front statements that we looked at. But you can still see that total net position, the second figure from the bottom that we saw up in the front of the book, 12,681,000. Because these are proprietary funds that always show their capital assets and debt in their statements. Page 12 is page 13 is the fiduciary fund. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped page 11. I do want to talk about this just briefly, and that's the results of operations for 1 year for the water fund and the wastewater fund. Both of them had an operating income, as Tim mentioned. They're both in the black this year. Wastewater just eked in there with 12 grand, but that's good. And then down the bottom, the third line from the bottom, the change in net position. They both went up by 200,000 plus. So that change in net position that was shown when they were combined, it was about 50-50 for the two funds. They each had over $200,000 worth of that 400 grand. Now we'll go to the fiduciary funds just to show you they're there on pages 13 and 14. And there's the police pension fund and the Hampton Cemetery fund. Page 15 is where you start getting some definitions that answer some of the questions like you asked Councilman Clark about, the depreciation and how you do that. So questions like this are going to be answered in the notes to the financial statements. So it starts off with a just quick little blurb about how you're organized and that your reporting entity is just you, the city proper. There's no housing authority that's part of you or anything like that.
Sure.
You have government-wide financial statements here, and it tells on page 16 more information about how you're tracking governmental revenues versus total operations. The general fund uses the modified accrual basis of accounting. Page 17 is describing each of your funds a little more and how you've got three different funds and governmentals. Fund types, that are subtypes of the governmental. You've got the general fund, the special revenue funds, where you've got something like a state law or an election that restricts the use of those funds. You've got those two special revenue funds for the Conservation Trust for the lottery funds and the street sales tax fund. And then you have some capital projects funds. Down below, where it says cash and investments, all of these subtitles going forward in all caps are going to be kind of definitions or explanations of what things mean. So on the bottom of 18, it shows what your capital assets are. They have to have a useful life of more than a year and be worth more than $5,000 or cost more than $5,000. Page 19 is the answer to that question as to how long they're appreciated. And there's 3 different categories shown there. And we have a schedule that shows even, asset by asset, how many years we're depreciating them over. Down on the bottom of 19 shows interfund transactions, and that has to do with those advances between the funds that Tim also talked about, that we'll get to in a second. But it just defines what some of these things are that are listed earlier in the book. Page 21, we start different notes besides the summary of accounting policies. And there's a section here on the budgets. If you're ever wondering about questions, when you get things and how this works, there's a synopsis there. Note 3 on page 22 shows how your cash and investments are divided up. You've got a lot in cash and less than that in investments. And we might be talking about different ways to start transferring money more routinely to your investment accounts. It shows what your custodial risk is, and you essentially have minimized your risks by having it either FDIC insured or collateralized or in a local government investment pool, a Apollo Trust. Over on page 24, there's a little listing of the types of assets by type. And as I mentioned, we have a schedule that shows every asset under each of those categories. And you can see that a fair amount of assets were added during 2021 for your governmental. This is the governmental ones first on page 24. And then over on page 25, you see construction in progress. In prior years got wiped out because that wastewater treatment plant was put into service. So you've got a big asset being added during that year. Up above, where it shows general government, public safety, and public works, Councilmember Collier, that's the appreciation sits assigned in those front two schedules only to the governmental funds by program.
Thank you.
Okay, note 5 talks about the internal balances and transfers. And those advances, the bottom right numbers there, especially the 2,241,000 are the kickers that we talk about frequently. So we've discussed possibly just paying off those smaller amounts soon, maybe in the next budget year, and having a concrete plan as to how soon the big $2 million amount will be repaid. Like it's in the way forward.
So you were suggesting everything that's like the general fund and the sales tax improvement fund, those 4 under 500,000 amounts, just paying those and then putting a debt service plan into place for the 2.2 million?
Right.
Okay.
And we'll see if that will work out with the big one, 379,000, but definitely try to get those off the books.
Okay.
Those paid back. Page 6 talks about long-term debt. And if you have a fair amount of long-term debt because of the big projects that you've been undertaking. So here on the left, on page 27 is the governmental activities, and it shows your street bonds are the biggie, the $9,270,000 still owed. So those were from 2018, and the paragraph underneath it and following shows everything about it in a little capsule, how much you issued, when you issued it, what the interest rate was, and how long it's going to take to pay them off. So you've always got that right here in this book. Over on the next page, 28, is the business type activities, and you've got a lot of small notes from the past, and then 2 big loans from Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority that are giving you a little under $3 million balances on those. And then you've got those advances from the other funds. So each of these is described as well in the next pages, including the years till they're fully paid off. Going over to page 31, is a long note about the fire and police pension plan. Your police department are members of the Colorado Fire and Police Pension Association. It's kind of the standard here in Colorado of what's considered a good pension plan for attracting and retaining police officers. And because it's a multiple employer pension plan where you share some of the risk of it if it collapsed or something, there's a very long note here that tells you about all those risks, all the actuarial information that kind of comes together and where you are. And some of the numbers from this are on the balance sheet on those initial pages that show you where you are, but generally it's considered to be in good shape. Note 8 on page 37 shows anything that's restricted. You'll notice that there's some restrictions in the fund balances on the balance sheets. And so part of it's for Tabor, you have to restrict 3% for emergencies. Every time we talk about it, we talk about, making sure you have many months worth, not just 3% of your fund balance for emergencies. It shows it's all showing in the general fund as 135,000 restricted. There's also a deficit net position on page 38, and that is in the wastewater fund, where when you get to the bottom line and you show what part of the net position is from capital minus the debt on it, et cetera, and what's reserved for this or that, there's no unreserved amount left. In fact, you're missing an amount that should be available. And so as we have here, it says upon completion of certain activities, which is getting the money, all the money recovered from the loan proceeds that you have to apply for after the plant comes on board, and perhaps getting some more loan forgiveness that we think this will be taken care of. But that does keep me always wanting to make sure you stay on top of those rate increases for wastewater, because you have a lot of debt there and you need to make sure that you have operating money that's not tied up with coverage for the debt or other items. We kind of vault forward, there's more information on the pension plan. It's 40 and 41. Then page 42 starts showing budgetary information. So all along we talked about what actual is. And this section of the audit says, well, how does that compare to your plan? Okay, you've got these numbers, but were they what you wanted them to be? Were they what you planned them to be? And so it shows you on these pages what the final budget was, what the actuals were, and you can see the revenues, for instance, on the general fund were conservatively budgeted. More came in than that. But it just going through this, it shows you that you complied with your budget. There were no expenditure overages. And you can kind of look at these as we go through the budget process this year to say, maybe we can be a little more easy about budgeting some of our revenues if they were under and that type of thing. But you had no budgetary problems that were itemized, that were found in the audit. Page 45 and 46 are your two non-major funds. So they were kind of combined into a column in the front of the book. They're small operations and they are for the ramp and the conservation trust fund, those two special revenue funds. And then it shows budget to actual on every fund here. Page 50 and 51 are the budget to actual for the water fund and the wastewater. And these little statements are kind of the opposite of, well, this is where it's showing you the financial health of those funds as opposed to the economic health with all of the capital and everything in it. It's just showing you more or less the cash in and cash out and how it compared to budget. So when you go down the actual column of this one, you will show that there was a net income of 234,000. Whereas before, remember we said there was 12 grand to the good in the wastewater. Oh, that was water. On the next page. Before, when we looked at this number for water and wastewater, it included depreciation. which isn't a cash expense, just a logging of the expenses, that the deterioration of your capital. So this shows you that the change in net position budget basis was 257,000. So money in the water fund was coming in more than the money that went out to the financial health during 2021 to the tune of 257,000 in water. But turn the page, and I hate to end on a down note, but in the wastewater fund, that actual revenue coming in and expenses going out was a net loss. That's money in, money out. So again, even though you have these valuable assets and some brand new beautiful ones, it's the cash that you need to operate on, and the money in, the money out. You need to keep thinking about with the rate increases, and don't be below the weight because you have such high net position based on the capital. Change in net position went down by 529,000 when you don't include the depreciation and the other items. So the last 2 pages of the book are just a report about how you spend money related to highways, and it's required by the state legislature. Thanks for your attention through all that, and I appreciate, probably happy to field any questions now or later that you can make.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, John.
Do we have a 5-year capital plan fund for water or utilities in the general fund?
Yeah, you have them listed and in mind, and in last year's budget, we started putting that together. And this year's budget, we've talked about adding more clear sections on that, perhaps in the back of the budget document, to really show those 5-year projects for all the funds.
Any more questions for Lorraine? Lorraine, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully you feel like you fulfilled your fiduciary obligations, and you can put this on the shelf or read it all the way through. Thank you very much.
Andy, I have a historical question. Procedurally, it seems like there's not an action request here, but doesn't council normally have a motion to approve or deny the financial report?
It hasn't been our practice to.
So we don't do
approve
it.
the audit.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Okay, very good.
Independent auditor's opinion, and we just receive it.
All right.
But we don't have to take any formal action.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, thank you. All right. So the Assistant City Administrator is not here, but he does have 2 requests for action. Look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Yeah, and the first one is on the VIP paid parking area, the ball fields for Rapid Grass. And
How many are you asking for the VIP parking?
Well, on the parking, and I'm curious to see what the consensus is on this, there'll be, because of the limited parking situation down there, we thought it would benefit to us to charge for about 20 parking spaces along there. I was under the impression that via the IGA that the rec district has with the city, this was something we were just able to do, but I think John wanted us to make sure we were good to go. We've not done paid parking before. So I think we're just,
We did talk with our city attorney about this, and it can be done, but it needs council approval because the city owns the property, but is in a lease with the recreation district. So the 2 parties to that agreement, the city and the recreation district, both need to approve of this action.
right, right. Well, I'm for supporting Rapid Grass. I think this is a good idea, but what does the rest of council think?
I think I agree that paid parking is something that we're already doing, so it makes sense that during an event, our leasee would be able to do it too on that property that they're kind of in control of, right?
Do we wanna see a plan of some sort? I mean, do we wanna hear what so it's 20 spaces? 20
Yes,
spaces,
so
what
we've
you have in mind?
identified about 20 spaces, so the spots that are right around the bull fields. Those will be the reserved paid parking, we're selling them ahead of time. We'll have a parking attendant there to, be checking that they paid for it. I think this will be really helpful too with the parking situation down there during Rapid Cross, that we're only gonna be letting, once they get to like past the Forest Service, that where the work shed is now, they'll have to be showing us that they've paid for their parking to come through. And so I think that will kind of help too with the traffic going up and down that way, and making sure we don't have cars going up the bike path, which I don't know if that would be a problem, but just in case. And then also making sure that those cars are then not trying to park in the private parking spots. There's a lot of construction equipment out there, so we don't want people going up there that's not supposed to be up there. So that's the plan. We're gonna be doing shuttling through town that day. That's obviously people can park wherever they can find parking, and we'll shuttle them down to the bull field. So
Those are rec center volunteers or rec center paid employees that are gonna be?
it'll be, I've not identified if it'll be one of our volunteers or one of our staff members yet, but it'll be someone. And then we're also working with ISMA on it. I assume there'll be business volunteers as well. And that will be.
All right, any more discussion? We have a request for action, so I would just say all those in favor of allowing the rec district to charge for VIP parking at the Rapid Grass event on August 20th, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Council, can I ask a question? Because I just want to be clear, I don't see us charging for parking on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But as I did mention, our IGA specifically says that we're allowed to charge admission. We're allowed to do revenue generating programs and events. So I'm just curious how parking is different from what the IGA says. Is it just because it doesn't specifically say parking? That was my main. And if
It's a
you
very good
believe that
question.
parking is different than what the IGA says, then that's fine. Thank you for approving it. But I guess I just was curious what the difference is from everything
Yeah,
else
I
that we
think
do.
so.
Well, it's actually, it sounds like it's already in the plan. So I mean, why would, I don't want to pay Carmen $500 to like answer a question we could read.
Right.
Or ask Andy to read for us and, I mean, no offense, I agree with you, Sam, 100%. I mean, once somebody leases, let's just say, city property, that we've kind of given them the right to do
Whatever they want.
whatever they want.
Revenue,
And so
revenue.
having Sam come back to ask for these events, when I know that their bottom line is, we want to make some money, right? So it just seems like a waste of their time for something that really wasn't a big discussion to be had anyway, right?
Well, Carmen's already reviewed it, right, Andy?
Yes.
So I'm sure she could give us the short answer now that it's been reviewed.
Well, and I kind of think that's where we were leaning tonight. Carmen had advised that it be brought before council because we are the landlord. But to Kate's point, maybe that was actually already in the agreement, depending on how you read it. I mean,
It's been an agreement for a long time,
Yeah.
so, I mean, they've been able to, they've been good stewards over there. The Rapid Grass has been a great thing.
Yeah.
Their parking situation has never been, from what I understand, a problem. So I'm just saying, let's save everybody some time.
Let them go for it.
And let them, and if there's a problem, then we come to Sam and Carmen
Do we
and
need to
Cameron
amend
and
the
we'll talk about
idea
it.
though to say activities such as and list the activities?
That'd be great.
Lisa, that's a very good
That way
idea.
she
We
doesn't
can
have to
just,
come
we can
back
just
and-
put it to rest.
Yep, I agree with that. That's a great
Because
idea.
if this is, like, to me, this is a revenue activity, like,
Mhm.
Right.
there's no difference between this or charging $5 to get in a gate.
Mhm.
No, I follow you. So I think we probably will amend that. And, but anyways, you have the VIP parking for August 20th.
Thank you.
I think Andy will follow up with you. He'll let you know what the end result is.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sam.
have a good item on here.
Thank you.
So we have have one more
I
thing.
think you have one other item on there.
She waited very
Actually,
patiently
more on it.
during the.
All right, so
Oh,
nu-
okay.
number 2 is the ISMA and Rec District have asked whether the city would be interested in helping to sponsor the Rapid Grass event on August 20th. The donor letter is attached for staff report.
Isn't it too late? Wasn't it July 16th is the cutoff?
Well, normally we budget in the year before is
I
what
gotcha.
I'm saying, so we could consider that for next year, formal action. Andy, any thoughts on this?
We do have a separate, fund for,
Community outreach?
community outreach, community promotion.
Mhm.
Most of the items there are designated, most of the money there is designated for certain events, but we always have a little bit of flexibility there to give council opportunity to consider certain requests that might come up.
That's fair. Is there an amount in that line item that you know?
Not a specific amount. I mean, I think we have a line item for other.
It sounds like the
I mean,
structure was like 5,000 to have your name on everything and then 1,000 and then kind of in there. Is that? I'm just finding out what the numbers were. I'm not saying anything.
And Andy, since I don't have that community outreach fund in front of me, like, 500 be a budget buster there? Or-
Would 1,000 be a
It's
budget
been
buster?
council's practice to be able to consider things or.
I don't want us to look cheap, guys.
Would you want to consider 1,000?
That's what I was
I would
thinking,
like
1,000.
John?
I don't think the city should be funding a lot of events, so.
It funds its own events. It funds the 4th of July. We paid $21,000 for fireworks and we paid $40,000 for horseshoe pit to have contests. So that's funding
Where does the money,
events.
where does the money end up? It's just for the event only, or is it all go back to rec center? Or
So for the event this year,
Yeah. it was-
our main fundraising goal was to cover the cost of the musicians, and the sound and lights. And so that has been our main fundraising goal, and definitely $1,000 contribution from you will be a huge help for us to reach that goal. We're just about there, and I think this would put us over it. Any additional funding will go towards covering, the staff time that's down there, and then also any like electricity or water bills that we might see from it. So that, and then the profits from this event will go back to a portion of it we donated to the Carlson Elementary, and a portion will go to the rec district as well.
And the truth of the matter is the people that come into town spend money in our town.
I
So
think
we
so.
gain revenue from sales tax. I
Absolutely.
don't know, $1,000, $5,000, 500, I don't know.
I mean, the sales tax looks pretty juicy in there. So,
That's why we fund events in our town.
right, exactly.
And I
100%.
completely appreciate and respect that this will not be a unanimous vote. But I'm going to float the idea of $1,000.
I'll second it.
And all those in favor of $1,000 going for the Rapid Grass event as a donation on August 20th, please raise your right hand, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it is passing 4-2. Again, I do respect folks on the other side of it, absolutely. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam.
Appreciate
Thank all. Have a good evening.
You too.
I am good now, right?
Yes.
I've been at work since 5.
Didn't you want to have a missed opportunity?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
All right, and then we have Deputy City Clerk, staff report submitted with one request for action.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report in front of you. There is one request for action, looking for a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement for the 2022 general election.
Yes, yeah. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the intergovernmental agreement for the 2022 general election.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any discussion?
We need to do better advertising,
Yes.
information. This year.
John, you are
Absolutely.
exactly right. When we lost by 2 votes, and it really was a golden opportunity for visitors who pay most of our sales tax to participate in that.
For the water, yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there somebody writing up a blurb, or do we have one for last year, or that we
have
can
one
start?
for- Yep, we have one for
I'll
last.
start posting away on my Facebook page and hopefully that'll get out into the public, you know,
Yeah,
so.
and I really think it would benefit all of us, like John said, if we could get that word out better, it was so close last.
I think we were at a disadvantage of the county above that,
Yeah.
with another increase of
Jimmy, you're
tax.
right. People
Yeah,
felt,
you know, they
there
just-
was so many on the back.
There was, man, and it just hit hard,
Yeah.
but and we were unfortunately not first
right?
on there, so.
No, you're exactly.
If you can send something to us, Andy, so that we can kind of post it on our.
Can we
personal
also have
pages.
like a discussion of like the rate increases this year and what we're gonna be looking at in the next couple of years as well?
Oh, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Because like,
They've
I
already
don't,
been
like,
done.
you know, but I think we need to really say, look, this is just this year. Let's talk about what 2023 looks like, 2024.
It's part of how they
They presented to
approached it
us.
last time when
Yeah.
it went up for lunch. It's just anybody was up for it and they didn't really
No, but I
understand
think
it.
it's our
And-
job to really push that.
Since we do every other month, there's 6 bills. And in 8.5 years, this will be $900 plus more for each household.
Yeah.
And you divide that by 6 bills, and I'm saying that our average water bill for a resident is gonna be $150 plus more dollars. As unbelievable as that is.
Okay.
More.
Well, I was like, is that, mine's a little higher than that.
Yeah, so, this year was a baby step, but it just keeps escalating and building on itself until we're it's over $900 more per resident. Yearly, if we don't do something.
But the argument I got was, we're paying 1% when we go to Safeway
Right.
in town, so we're not saving us any money. And that's what we got to explain to them,
Yeah.
how the outsiders will help you.
Right. And,
Oh, yeah.
and John, I look at that 2 ways, because when you go get a real nice looking tow truck, you pay big time, right? Okay, or maybe in our case, it's a new car, you would pay big time, but it's an unusual event. Safeway, when you come out with your groceries, look, and a lot of what you put in your cart is not taxed. So for most, right, for most folks, it might be $3, but the tourists, the visitors who really help us.
Well, it's the 1% that all of us can decide whether we want to pay for it or not.
Right.
We do have that option, unfortunately, the mayor's right. I wrote a check for 31 grand for the place on the tow truck for 1 year.
Jimmy, that was big of you to share that,
So
because that was a heavy hit, man.
yeah, and the city obviously gets whatever of that, so. Yeah, trust me, when it comes to, I know all too well that, where we do and don't have the opportunity to actually make the choice. And when it's up to somebody else, I think it's way better than just us that live here year round,
Well, we're
so.
also not the only ones that are like our wastewater usage and our water usage is going up because we are getting more and more tourism.
Well, absolutely.
So why are the people that are coming to visit not participating?
That's why we lost that vote right
Yeah.
too.
Let's get them
That's the
on
whole
board.
thing, right? Unfortunately, now us 360 residents get stuck with that.
Mhm.
That increase is all we carry the burden on ourselves.
I don't think they're gonna mind because they're still driving the bejeebers out of their cars despite the fact that gas is apparently through the roof. So I think that they can suck up a little water.
But I do think there were a lot of taxes on the last one, but I think also our messaging needs to be consistent and like we need to start now, like as soon as we get the language for what we're asking for, we need to start now with, look,
I do think it'll be easier if we could do just our own, if it's that particular thing on the ballot, not share the county increase to another.
do we know what the county is looking at this year?
Lisa.
You're shaking that head.
I just think that it would make sense, from what I've heard, that the county may increase some mills going to the fire
Fire
authority.
authority. I kind of expected that.
And I don't know if that is official, but I would look probably to see that.
And we'll see that property tax was correct. Well, sure it will, because it'll be on your property taxes.
Okay.
Yep.
Mill levy for the fire authority, it should not affect Idaho Springs because we pay out of our sales tax.
No, that's property tax, correct?
Well,
It's
we
our
get
property
about,
tax.
we do, we,
That's what I thought.
yeah, I mean, we get like 180,000 a year in property tax. I think it actually was 178,000.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing.
1400.
Really, I mean, it's minimal.
It's pretty minimal.
You're right, the property tax won't affect us. It would just go to the emergency services district. Is that what you're referring to? John? The mill levy would just affect those in the emergency services district, not the municipalities.
Correct, because they wouldn't get it off of our sales tax is our sales tax, correct?
Because we just do an annual contribution,
Right.
not based on the mill levy.
From property tax though, not from sales.
Correct.
Well, it's from a general fund. I mean.
Oh,
it's-
okay. You were correct, then. Yeah, all right, I thought that was just from that. So,
Good point.
yeah,
Very good
Is
point.
that your understanding, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
nice work, John. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
No. All right, so any more discussion on that motion? All right.
Oh, I have one last question. Do we have an idea what this is going to cost the city? You split that with the county?
What's that?
The
The
election?
election.
We do work with the county, obviously, but I'm not sure what that cost. Wonder, do you know, it's like 14 grand?
I'm not quite sure what that costs. I just have something in my head, but it was a recount, so it's probably gonna be a totally wrong number. So I don't wanna give you false
No, that's
false
cool.
information.
But,
55,000.
yeah, and compared to the water situation, I think it's a relatively inconsequential amount, but
I'm just asking because I
I
know
think
there's
we
a
can,
question.
we can probably get you a figure.
We can
rough-
get that
rough
figure
figure
in the next step report.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, thank you.
No, we'll find out what that is.
So we're gonna have a workshop on this? Workshop on develop the communication.
The language and the verbiage.
Oh,
You already
And all
have
that
that,
stuff.
and- But you already have the communication?
Well, we have the description, we can certainly have a work session, we probably should.
I would like a work session so that not only do we have a legal description that's gonna go on the ballot,
Yeah.
but how do we explain this so that it makes sense? Because sometimes the legal description on the ballot, you have to go back and read it a couple of
Right.
times to make
Right.
sure that you're reading it
Oh, yeah,
correctly.
and sometimes things are worded backwards.
A yes means no, and a no.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I get you. I get
Yeah.
that.
And, we want this out early enough so that, I mean, a lot of folks rely on mail-in voting. And you want this out in the public before people fill that out,
Yes.
right?
yes.
Sometimes, like almost a month before. So, anyways, we stand a better chance, I think, of this city to promote that. So, I have a motion and a second, and is there any further discussion on this? All right, well then, all those in favor of approving the intergovernmental agreement for 2022 general election, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Let's see here, Wonder, you don't have anything else for us, do you?
I just have the safe built building permit report, which shows how many building permits were submitted, what the
Right.
valuation was, and then the sales tax numbers.
Right, well, thank you.
I have one question for one, if I may.
Yeah.
It's kind of personal. Wonder, do I need a permit for new doors at my house at exterior?
No.
Thank you.
All right, and Jared, you don't have anything for us tonight, right? Oh, sorry.
May I
Wonder-
clarify that? You're not widening the door over.
Not at all.
right? Nope. Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine.
Thank you.
Jared, anything
Same with
further
windows,
for
right?
us?
Nothing else.
You do
Okay,
need a
all
permit
right.
For window. or-
And Chief, anything new to report? I see,
No matter what. Oh, really?
there's no request for action, but just, do you have anything else?
Not at all. Can I?
Yeah.
The chief a little bit. Chief, I noticed that you did the school for human trafficking, sex
Oh, yeah.
trafficking, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I don't know if you had heard, it's been a few weeks now, but there's obviously you probably know this trick of the zip tie around wiper blades, usually on the back of a vehicle.
Mhm.
You know this, Lisa?
I've heard,
Okay.
I've read something about this recently.
So yeah, I think it's good to everybody be aware. You maybe put it out on the community page or whatever. I know just wanted to shop. What this is it's a way to signify to other human trafficking or sex trafficking people that this is a really easy target or victim that it's not funny.
No, it's not funny. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrifying, but I just wanna, now you just made me very mad.
And well, sorry.
No, not in that way, but like, yeah,
Some kind of underground signal?
yeah, like a signal.
Correct. And it's very
POS
true,
is-
it's very real. And
Wow, I never heard of it.
it's a stupid zip tie around like the wiper arm on your back.
On the back
On the
window.
back window. Lisa knows obviously that. But young, easy targets, young kids that are 16, 17 years old, it's an easy target for everybody in this, underground realm of awful.
Pipeline, the trafficking
They-
pipeline.
They know what that is. And since we're on I-70, it's, just beware. I mean, it's a real thing. Chief, you probably heard about it, know about it.
I'd never heard of this.
It-
That-
yeah,
That's why
And
they
it's
tell women,
stupid,
yeah, no, but
but you'd never notice it.
that's why
No,
they tell women too, if you at night, you see things on your car, like underneath the windshield wiper.
Leave 'em
get in the
alone.
car and drive away
Leave 'em alone.
and take it out. Don't do it. Don't go, oh God, get out of your car.
that's what they're counting on,
Leave them alone.
It's like a tactic to get
It is.
out
To
of your
get you out of your vehicle,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
huh? Wow.
anyway,
Oh, my God.
thanks, Chief, for doing that. I mean,
Well, all right. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn?
I do.
Yes.
I do actually. So I heard this from somebody else, and I thought this was really great, and it kind of goes along to the fire authority, and you could tell me if this is from, the gentleman that I spoke with said his town, the fire department or the fire authority, every fall, like after the leaves fell, would say, hey, $100 to come around with the fire department and we clean out your gutters before we go into town. So it's a fundraiser for the fire department. And I love that idea, so I'm sending it to you.
I don't know anything about it. The Idaho Springs, what they call it, it's part of department. Is still a 503 entity that they use the pancake breakfast.
Mhm.
I can ask Mike Anderson. He'd know.
I pay
I don't know
$100 to
anything
get my
about
gutters
that.
cleaned.
Okay, anything further? I just want to point out that we do not have a work session next week. So we'll probably have a little longer meeting on August 22nd.
Okay.
We're due for a work session and a regular meeting. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, and we're going to adjourn at 8:11.
Actually, I'll be out of town